That was Father Tom Soroka with Sermons at St. Nicholas. This is a weekly presentation of Ancient Faith Radio. Proclaiming Christ, victor over sin and death. You're listening to Ancient Faith Radio, your Orthodox Internet radio connection.
Welcome to Live with the Louhs with your hosts, Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne Lowe, where we will connect our Orthodox faith to day-to-day living and relationships to our family, our work, and our view of ourselves. Father Nicholas is the priest at St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church in Jacksonville, and Dr. Roxanne is a licensed clinical psychologist who uses her extensive training in private practice. Questions are welcome by calling 855-237-2346. That's 855-237-2346. Here now is Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Live with the Louhs. My name is Father Nicholas Lowe. I'm the parish priest at St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church right here in Jacksonville, Florida. And tonight I'm so blessed to have my lovely wife as the co-host.
Good evening, everyone. I can't believe we're already, 2 weeks out from Christmas?
It's only about 10 days, actually, Roxanne, and we are all a little bit stressed as the holidays are getting a little bit closer. But we're so glad that you've taken the time to join us, friends, this evening. We are just elated about who our guests are going to be. But before we introduce them to you, or really reintroduce you to them, we do want to tell you just a little bit about ways that you can stay connected to us through our social media platforms. Friends, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, all under the headings of the Louhs. So if you're on any of those social media platforms, we encourage you to stay connected to us all throughout the week through those media platforms. We also have all of our sermons right here on Ancient Faith under Healthy Souls, and they're also on our YouTube channel under the Louhs as well. And about a year and a half ago, Roxanne and I began sending out these daily inspirational messages, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people receive these messages every single day. Every day we see their new numbers of people subscribing. If you're one of these people that love to receive just a daily word of encouragement to kind of guide you in your walk of faith, then take advantage of this ministry. All you have to do is go to our website at thelouhs.com. That's LOUHS.com/subscribe. And all you have to do is simply put in your email address. And every morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, you'll receive one of our daily words of encouragement. And if you find those beneficial, do us a favor, share them with your family and your friends. We just want to share God's light, make a difference in this world. And as always, we believe truthfully that true growth in any relationship happens, obviously, in communication. And so we don't want this to be a monologue tonight. We'd love to hear from you. So you're welcome to join the conversation tonight by calling us at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-237-2346. You can also email us during the live broadcast of this show by emailing us at that's ask at ancientfaith.com. That's ask at ancientfaith.com. And we are also simultaneously broadcasting this show on our social media platforms of Ancient Faith, as well as on the Louhs Facebook page. So definitely, if you want to leave a comment there, we'll definitely get to it during the show. So we thought tonight that we would just take a break from the typical topics that we deal with most of the time, or on faith or on psychology. That's things that we've kind of prided ourselves on, to share with you two people that really made a difference in our lives. They are John and Tonya Maddex. In fact, these people, who are the CEO of Ancient Faith Ministries and Ancient Faith Radio, were people that were really the catalyst to getting us on this radio program and to have this kind of ministry, to have this platform. And so they're going to be retiring in a very short period of time, and we just wanted to take a moment to honor a show to them. And so let me just remind all of you about the amazing work that John and Tonya Maddex have done. So John Maddex, who was the catalyst that helped us also establish the show, is also the CEO of Ancient Faith Ministries, a publishing and radio outreach operating both Ancient Faith Radio and Ancient Faith Publishing. And many of you take access to that all the time. He has over 50 years of experience in broadcasting, having served at the Moody Bible Institute and Focus on the Family. Many of us know both of these ministries very well. He was responsible for Moody's 35 owned and operated radio stations for much of that time. and he has served on the board of the Fellowship of St. James, which publishes Touchstone and Salvo magazines, as well as the National Religious Broadcasters. He and his wife Tonya live in Chesterton, Indiana, and have 2 adult children with 8 beautiful grandchildren. And John and Tonya, as always, welcome to Live with the Louhs.
Well, thank you. When you talked about taking a break from your psychology emphasis, I thought, well, now we'll be a couple of good psychological cases for you. That's right. See if you can figure us out. Others have tried.
I mean, on that note, figuring you guys out, let's hear about your story in finding the Orthodox Church.
Wow. Tonya, you want to start?
Yeah, our journey. It's been an amazing journey, actually. We were kind of looking at different churches for a while, going to different churches, and our son-in-law happened to, through a class that he was taking at Moody, happened to go to the Orthodox Church. I think it was for a class assignment, and to go somewhere, a different tradition that he would normally go to. And so he went and visited Holy Trinity in Chicago and never left. And so then, of course, he was all excited about what he had found, and he came to our house one evening and told us all about Orthodoxy. And John was not very enthusiastic and actually gave him quite a hard time.
Well, hard time. I asked him some reasonable questions.
Right.
As any good father-in-law would do.
Right. Like,
The only thing is,
they may have started with, what in the world are you into? But, essentially, I was just interested.
I only had to pinch him 3 times.
Yeah, he did. Or kick me under the table.
Under the table.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was a pretty big contrast from right, your faith practice at the time.
Night and day. And from his own. I mean, his mom and dad are longtime evangelical, faithful evangelical people, very good friends of ours. We love them. And for all of us, it was like, what is this? We had really not had any category for Orthodox Christianity. So we knew what we were, and we knew that we were not that. So trying to figure that out, and it wouldn't have been such a concern to us except for the fact that they were getting kind of serious, and it looked to us like marriage was on the horizon, and then we'd have grandchildren that were, grew up in this strange faith, and it was just enough to concern us and feel like we've got to ask some questions.
Well, I have to keep, when he keeps saying us, he doesn't remember it was just him.
All right.
Tonya, let's be clear about how this really went down.
Let's be clear about how this is. I was ready to convert like the first day.
This is true.
That's true.
Really?
And so we kind of have to pull him kicking and screaming. And he was not real enthusiastic right at the beginning.
Exactly. And I think, I was just thinking, it's one thing when you have, when you're just kind of exploring your faith and you're, or different churches, because you feel like you're missing something. But that wasn't really the case here. This was like you were involved in a church, you were engaged in it, and it really, through the catalyst of your son-in-law at the time, became, it really kind of charted this course, almost kind of created this emptiness that you probably had. That's
a good way to put it.
Yeah, and then ended up, and then finding the way.
We didn't know what we didn't have.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you go to a service? I mean, did he invite you to come along? And you said, well,
yeah. As a matter of fact, he did. Well, after we had exchanged books, because he asked me if I would read some things, and I told him I'll read yours if you read mine. And so, we just kind of exchanged books and agreed to disagree. And so a little bit later on, he did invite us to come. And this was at the Holy Trinity Cathedral in downtown Chicago, near the corner of Division and Levitt. And it is a historic cathedral, beautiful on the inside, and but pretty ethnic, and very, very traditional, as all Orthodox churches are. But I mean, this was really something that was strange for us. So it was, for me, it was very disconcerting because I didn't recognize anything that was happening. You know, people were up at the top, at the front, chanting, Lord have mercy, just about as fast as they could get it out of their mouths. And they were singing everything, and their sermon was about 5 minutes long. And there was just, to me, nothing compelling. I mean, so keep in mind, I'm coming from a mindset that church was good if it was compelling. If the music was good, if the sermon was good, then church was good. If the music that Sunday was a little off, or maybe the preacher had a bad day, well, how was church today? Not so hot. Yeah, it didn't go so well. So that was how we evaluated what worship was. And you look back at that now and you say, what were we thinking? You know, that's just so strange to our ears now. But it was at that time. It was very strange. And so, you know, we all went out to breakfast afterwards up in Evanston where we lived. And everybody's around the table and they're talking about, you know, the service. And our son-in-law says, what did you think, John? And I basically said, I don't get it. I mean, I didn't think it was much of anything. It just was nothing worshipful, nothing edifying. And so I said, you know, Tonya, why don't you share what your thoughts were, thinking that she'd be agreeing with me. And she said, well, I don't know. I just kind of feel like maybe I worshiped for the first time in my life this morning.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, brother. And then
Now I'm in trouble.
So there's my son, Bobby, who's a Wheaton grad. And, you know, he grew up in our home and he knew what we believed. And so, Bobby, you know, why don't you share with Troy, you know, what you thought? And he said, well, to be honest, Dad, we've been going with Molly and Troy to their church for, you know, several weeks now. So there I sat basically alone.
You were the island.
I was the island unto myself. And, you know, we had a good relationship. We had some laughs about it. And so there was no tension, but it was just obvious that they're getting something that I don't get. And so that took a while. And really, it took 3 years when it's all said and done of moving from this is wrong to maybe there's something we can learn from this church. Although, as I told Molly one day, I'll never be Orthodox. And of course, she still reminds me of that. And to saying, well, you know, there's a lot here that is worth preserving and worth understanding. And then, you know, you get to the point where you just feel like you've got to be Orthodox. So I just took a 3-year journey and put it into 15 seconds. So.
Well, I mean, John, you know, and I've had, you know, you've been on the show before, and I love when you share the stories. You know, really for you, what was it because that really kind of just changed the catalyst that kind of said, you know, wait a minute, let me like go a little bit deeper in this pool because, you know, I think for our listeners who are tuning in, I think, you know, obviously, you know, John and Tonya have been overseeing the work with their great team over at Ancient Faith, but, you know, they were not just attending a church, they were part of the leadership of the church. I mean, you were part of a huge broadcasting network that traveled all over the world. I mean, so, you know, what was it, you know, that was kind of like, wait a minute, there's something that I haven't been getting that I really want to explore that became the catalyst for you becoming Orthodox eventually?
Well, and there really is that. I can very easily identify that. Where we were in our faith at the time was starting with what we believed today and then moving backwards from there and saying, well, you know, this is a historical faith too. We had great leaders like D.L. Moody, like Charles Haddon Spurgeon, you know, like Charles Hodge and Cornelius Van Til. And I was really quoting and affirming a very reformed based theology. And then I found myself kind of running out of years. Like, okay, now that's the 1700s. Okay, what about the 16? Well, yeah, so now we're into Zwingli, we're into Luther and Calvin. Okay, then now what? And so I was running into some huge problems by going from where I was backwards. So I said, I got this all wrong. I need to start from the establishment of the Church of Jesus Christ and move forward. and find out at what point did they believe what I believe today. And I was shocked to find out that it wasn't until after the 1600s or the 1700s that you start to see any resemblance of the faith that I thought was the one true faith. And the catalyst for me was the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, because we didn't believe that as evangelical Christians. We felt that communion was a symbol, that it represented the body and blood of Christ, that it was a remembrance service, not that this was truly his most precious blood and truly his most holy body. And so now I'm thinking, okay, how long did Christians believe that? Did they believe that in the first 2 or 3 or 4 centuries? And I was given a book by a gentleman by the name of Thomas Howard. He was a Roman Catholic. He was a former evangelical. He was the brother of Elizabeth Elliot, who was a very well-known evangelical speaker. And his book was entitled Evangelical is Not Enough. It's a short little book. Highly recommend it. He started to catalog for me the viewpoint of the early church fathers on the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. I found out that there was absolutely no deviation for 1,500 years on that. That the church, that Christians believed that Christ was truly present in the bread and wine for 1,500 to 1,600 years, even Calvin and Luther. And I thought to myself, now I'm getting a little upset because somebody changed that. And I wanted to know who and why. On what authority did someone decide, yep, you know what? We don't believe that anymore. Was it Scripture? Were they basing that on the Bible? Well, then it's your interpretation of the Bible today compared with 1,500-year interpretation of the church on the Bible. So do you remember those conversations we would have?
I do. Yeah, I heard them every night.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, we did. One point.
No, go ahead. I would love to hear Tonya. Go ahead.
At one point, we went to our first Pascha, and John was he was upset because they were blessing Easter baskets, and they had the red eggs and they were cracking them on each other, and we walked out the door, and he said, "I've never seen such a thing," and he said, "I'm not going to go back," and so I just started crying. I just, because I thought, oh, my hope is lost. And so when we get to the car, I said, "John, if we don't go there, I'm not going to go anywhere." And so I didn't. And I think that was kind of when he started searching the church more, because he really didn't want me to stay home. But I did. And he started studying.
And so it really took a kind of a buffer for us was the wonderful All Saints Antiochian Orthodox Church in Chicago, which was primarily a convert parish. And so the people there knew our questions. They knew where we were coming from. And they very gently and lovingly, really literally loved us into the church. We got a lot of help from Father Patrick Henry Reardon, the priest there, and very theologically astute and a biblical scholar. And I mean, he's forgotten more Bible than I've ever known in my life.
And he was so patient with John. Yeah. Because John was always firing questions at him, and he would just so patiently answer John's questions. And Molly was with us one night, and John was asking some questions, and Molly was sitting behind me, and she was going, "Don't go there, Dad, don't go there."
And so it's not just our daughter that does that.
No. So we were all praying John in, and Father Pat, and just the faithful at
All
Saints just loved him and was so patient and so kind.
Yeah, so I mean, there you go, 3 years, and finally, in July of 2000, we were received into the church at All Saints by chrismation with the blessing of
Mm-hmm.
Father Pat and Metropolitan Philip,
Mm-hmm.
and have really never turned back. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we discovered what we were looking for. It was that uh, eternal link to the early church. It was that unbroken link that
Mm-hmm.
the physical, organic church that Christ established still existed today. And when I heard about the church, the Patriarch of Antioch, which I know Antioch, they were first called Christians in Antioch. So this was biblical. When I found out that the Patriarchal Cathedral was on a street called Straight in Damascus, and I'm
Right.
looking in my Bibles, okay, yes, there is a street called Straight in Damascus. Are you telling me this is the same church? I mean, that was mind blowing. And I know not the physical building, but it is the same church. The baptismal records
Mm-hmm.
go all the way back. And to me, that was just life changing.
That's extraordinary, and I love when you share that story. And if you're just tuning in tonight to Live with the Louhs, we are speaking with John and Tonya Maddex. As you all know, John is the CEO of Ancient Faith Ministries, and he's beginning a new chapter in his life. He's gonna say goodbye, or just maybe see you later from Ancient Faith for some time. He's just gonna and I'm sure he's got other projects that he's got planned, and hopefully some he'll share some of that with us in the future, a little bit later on in the show. But I do encourage you, if you'd like to speak with John or Tonya, please feel free to call in at 1 855 237 2346. That's 1 855 237 2346. You can also email us a question at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. And really, in many ways, this is just a show just to kind of say thank you. Thank you to both of you for what you've done, not only for the two of us, but also what you've done for our church. And that kind of brings us to our next, the next question that Wex and I were thinking about before the show. Um, you took what were the gifts that God gave you, and how the Bible speaks about the fact that each one of us have been bestowed by the grace of God with gifts, and that we're called to really, in many ways, share them, to unwrap them, and to utilize those gifts for His kingdom, for the glory of God. And you've done just that. You've taken a gift that you had within the radio industry and utilized that to create a platform that really, in the Orthodox Church, we have not had cast that net as far as what Ancient Faith has been able to do. And so I'd love for you to talk to us really about the history of Ancient Faith, your involvement in getting involved with Ancient Faith and what it was before then, and the journey, and really maybe share with us, John and Tonya as well. What was what was one of the most surprising things that you found that was so just uplifting for you in that journey? And I'm sure there's a lot, but if just maybe one that comes to your mind.
Yeah. So, our mutual friend Bill Marianas talks about getting to know your why. And so when I think of my why, and I think it's safe to say our why, John and Tonya, God put us on this planet to create Ancient Faith. I mean, all of the years of radio experience that I had, I'm so thankful for those. I have no regrets about the ministry that God put me into at Moody, and the friendships, the integrity of the Moody Bible Institute, the people. They are still our friends to this day. We go camping with people who are still very closely associated at Moody. And so I'm very thankful for those days and very thankful for the ministry that God gave us there, but it was all in preparation for this. And I can remember we were at a Touchstone conference, and there was a pastor friend there by the name of Pastor Wilbur Ellsworth, who parenthetically is now Father Wilbur Ellsworth in the Antiochian Archdiocese, but he was at that time was an evangelical pastor, very warm to Orthodoxy at the time. And we had known him for 30 years. And he came up to me after the conference and he said, John, you've got all these years of experience in radio and now you're Orthodox. Isn't there any way you can use those years of experience for the Orthodox Church? And I thought to myself, but how? I mean, there are no radio stations available anymore. All of the frequencies in markets of any size are taken up. you would have to buy a station. And the cost of purchasing an FM station in a market the size of Chicago would be prohibitive. $200 million easily. And so I just thought it's impossible. And I really had a hard time sleeping that night, trying to figure out how would we do this. And I remembered that something came to me in the middle of the night. I remember someone talking about a new technology that allowed people to stream music on their computer from the internet. And they called it internet radio. Okay, we're talking 2003.
Wow.
And so I did a little search. You could do searches back then on Google, believe it or not. I did a search and I found a handful of internet radio stations. I mean, just a handful. One of them was a Southern Gospel Quartet radio station, which that's all they played. They played the Statesman Quartet, the Blackwood Brothers, the Gaithers. And so I brought that up on my computer and listened to it, and I thought, this really sounds professional. And they had a professional guy doing the announcing, and his voice sounded familiar to me. And I said, I know him. That's Carl from Madison, Wisconsin, who I knew from National Religious Broadcasters. And so I contacted him, and I said, that's you, isn't it, Carl? He said, yeah, that's me. I said, you've got to tell me how you're doing this. And so he was very gracious in sending me a list of equipment and software and said, this is what you do to get started. And so Tonya and I talked about it and talked about it with Pastor Wilbur the next day. And we decided, you know what? We're 50. I would think I was 53 at the time. You were in the same age range. All right.
Smart, very smart. John. That's good.
We won't calculate.
No. So we said, let's do it. If we're going to do it now. So we headed off to the shopping center, went to the Mac store, picked up an iMac, picked up some microphones, picked up some cables, picked up an audio interface for the computer, and went online and downloaded the software and started reading the manuals. But the only problem, we didn't have any music. We had this great idea, but no music.
We didn't think we could sing it that well yet.
We weren't able to sing the songs yet. Just weren't. So we went to All Saints the next Sunday and said, okay, here's our idea. It sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, this could work if we had some music. Do you guys have any Orthodox CDs at home you could let us borrow? I said, we'll bring them back next week. But on Sunday, if you could bring us some CDs, it would help us get started. Well, I'm thinking maybe we'll get 5 or 10 CDs. So the next Sunday, people are getting out of their cars with shopping bags full of Orthodox CDs. And they kept coming in with both hands full. And by the time, I don't know, Tonya, did we have 100 CDs?
Oh, well over 100. And the interesting thing, there were no duplicates.
Yeah, it was pretty much all fresh.
But, John, it's kind of a miracle how all along the way that God has provided things that we needed before we knew that we needed. We
weren't smart enough to know what we needed.
No, but, it was such a new technology. You didn't know about it, and you were in broadcasting. And then every time we moved, the Lord provided somebody, and it was always more than what we knew. Honestly, really, we know absolutely nothing, but God has provided amazing people, and He provided it before we knew we needed it.
Yeah. Engineers, content producers. I mean, this program is going to be followed by our good friend, Father Tom Soroka. And Father Tom came to us with an idea for our very first podcast in 2006 or 7, something like that. And he wanted to call it The Path. And he wanted to do daily readings of the scripture, the New Testament, Old Testament, and during Lent to do the Old Testament readings, but the gospel in the New Testament other times. And then a commentary from the fathers. And he said every day would be maybe 5 minutes. And I said, I love this idea. And so we drove out to Pittsburgh and met with him, met with his parish, and brought him some equipment. And he started at it. I mean, and he has not stopped since. He is still producing these for us, and it's one of our most popular features. People subscribe to the path, and those are the types of people God brought to us
Right.
out of nowhere.
Nowhere.
There's no way we would know who Father Tom
Right.
Soroka is.
Right.
But we had heard from another friend that, there is a very good preacher in the Pittsburgh area who might be willing to record his sermons. And so that was Father Tom. So we did that, but then it's this podcast idea of the paths that really helped launch us. And so, I mean, and that's, as Tonya's right, it's people like that God just brought into our path. And so, we loaded the CDs onto the computer and we pulled the trigger on Thanksgiving weekend of 2004 and started just streaming music and seeing if anybody would listen.
I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, this story as I'm listening to, I mean, God's hand. I mean, truly in all of it. Before what you were doing in your lives together. The son-in-law who comes into your home, and then it happens to go to church, and then, I mean, it all just we always say this, but when God, has this sort of plan and purpose for our lives, he really does continue to open the doors in ways that allow it to come into fruition in a really big way. And seemingly, I mean, it just seems seamless for you guys. But I'm sure that there were at times some struggles you may have run into, in the beginning of this ministry. What types of things do you remember facing, early on?
Technical. So many technical problems. Oh,
can only imagine.
So many tears.
Well, 'cause I was still working full time at Moody, so I would go to work during the day, but she would edit and produce things. Our good friend Steve Robinson and Bill Gould did a show called Our Life in Christ, which is still very popular, even though it hasn't been in production for years. They would send us recordings of their show, which was a live show on a Phoenix radio station. Tonya, during the day, would edit out the commercials and put it into a format that we could use on Ancient Faith. And so we were using a software called Pro Tools. It was on a Mac, and there was something that I just wasn't technically enough to know why, but she would get to the end of producing and editing, having put hours into it, and then she would render it as an MP3 file, and it would crash.
Oh no!
It was so frustrating. So when she says technical, that's what she's remembering. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah, but I mean, just finding content. I mean, we would make contact with priests and ask them if they would be interested in being on the radio, and they didn't know who I was.
We had to do a lot of begging at first, kind of explaining what we were trying to do.
And so it was very difficult to get enough people who saw the vision and were willing to take a risk with us. And we got a grant from the Farrer Foundation early on to purchase some digital pocket recorders that were very high quality. And we would send those out. We would say, if you'll do a show for us, we'll provide you the equipment. We'll edit it. All you have to do is talk. And then the big day was when we contacted Father Thomas Hopko of blessed memory. We made a cold call to him. I had met him one time, but I was sure he had never remembered me. So I called him and I said, Father Tom, this is John Maddex. I'm sure you don't remember me. We met at the Anayukian village. And he said, no, you interviewed me. I do remember. And I said, I've got a crazy idea. I know you just retired from St. Vlad's. He was living at the monastery at Elwood City. I said, would you be interested in doing, I didn't even use the term podcast because I knew he wouldn't know what that was. I barely knew. Would you be willing to do a radio show of just teaching? And he said, well, you just need to know that I am not technical. If I have to do anything technical, it'll fail. And I said, no. We will drive to Elwood City with the equipment. We'll set it up in your study. We'll teach you how to use it. You push one button to record and one button to stop recording. Tonya pre-addressed and stamped like 20 manila envelopes and put compact flashcards in each one of them. That all you do, Father, is after you record about 5 of them, take out the compact flashcard, drop it in the envelope, put it in the mail, and that'll get it to us, and then start on the next one. And then we would return that to him, and we would cycle it that way. That his willingness to do that is what gave us credibility. Oh, you have Father Tom Hopko on.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Now I get it. Now I'll listen. And I mean, he was such a huge blessing to us, so kind.
Which you didn't
to
even
us.
realize at the time was going to be instrumental for you getting other.
Oh, super instrumental.
Wow.
And I mean, it was so fun because he would send us the tapes, and he would also greet us every time at the beginning. Oh, beloved John, Tonya, Bobby, the how did he say it? The patient family of the Maddexes who have to put up with my mistakes. Here's another humble offering. If you can use it, fine. If not, it won't hurt my feelings. But I'm thinking every word you say, I want.
Right, right.
And it was fun to actually edit him because you had to listen to every word, because in the middle of his talk, he would just go off and say, oh, I don't know if I really want to say it that way. Maybe if you could take that out.
Yeah.
Put this in.
Yeah, he would pause and say, Tonya, if you're the one editing this, if you want to take that out, that's fine. I don't know that that's useful.
That's so beautiful. That, and what an extraordinary man. And, talk about, a giant within Orthodoxy over the last 50 years, and someone that, we're still, even after several years of him being gone, still hear him on the radio, and just his presence alone and his wisdom. And if you're just joining our show and are, wondering who Father Tom Hopko is, I mean, you can't talk about Orthodoxy in America without speaking about Father Thomas Hopko. He's just one of the really great theologians and priests that we've had in this country, and really someone that has been the standard bearer, in my opinion, for how to articulate, share our faith in very practical and pragmatic ways, and just an extraordinary orator. I mean, just on so many levels. So if you ever pick up any of his books, you will not be disappointed at all. But we want to take a quick break, give the Maddexes a little break, and also to kind of share with you some of the new things that are coming here at Ancient Faith Ministries. But on the other side of the break, we're going to talk to John and Tonya about what their future is, what their plans are after they retire at the beginning of the new year. And so stay right with us here on Live with the Louhs.
Live with the Louhs with Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne will be back in a moment. Give them a call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. They would love to hear from you.
Are you struggling in your walk with Christ? Do you want to rediscover your reason for living, the person you were created to be? Renewing You, a priest, a psychologist, and a plan gives you the keys to unlock areas of your life that hold you back from fully experiencing the renewal and transformation God has in mind for you. Co-authored by a priest and a psychologist, Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne Lowe, Renewing You combines principles of spiritual growth with psychological tools to help you become your best self, fully connected with God's purpose for you. To purchase this book, please go to store.ancientfaith.com. That's store.ancientfaith.com.
We're back with Live with the Louhs and Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne. Do you have a question for the Louhs? Call in now at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here once again is Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne.
Welcome back, everyone, to Live with the Louhs. So grateful that you're joining us this evening. We're so blessed to have our dear friends, John and Tonya Maddex. If you're new to Live with the Louhs, or for that matter, Ancient Faith, let me tell you that John and Tonya Maddex are the CEO of Ancient Faith Ministries, and they are, after so many years, are taking a break from their responsibilities in that role, but will continue to be doing things throughout the Orthodox Church as well as within Ancient Faith. And so we're just spending a time just to thank them, because they are the impetus, really the catalyst that got the two of us, Roxanne and I, on the airwaves. And it's just a way for us to kind of thank them for all that they've done, but also for all of you to hear the extraordinary work that Ancient Faith is doing.
And
And
Father Nick, I just have to tell you and
Mhm.
Roxanne, when Tonya talked about uniquely bringing people into our lives, I
Mhm.
distinctly remember when we met at the Nashville clergy
Yes.
laity, and
Mhm.
we didn't know you, you didn't know us. We were introduced by mutual friends, Father
Mm.
Evan and Father Barnabas.
Mhm.
And we, after that meeting, realized that here's another gift from God, that God
Oh.
gave us, you two, to help advance what's happening here. And I'm so very proud of both of you and what you have done with the talent God has given you as a husband and wife, as a priest and a psychologist, and the help that you all have brought to people all over the world. I mean, we won't know the full story until we get to heaven, the lives of people you have touched, people's lives. And I just thank you for taking a risk with us and coming on board and being a part of our family. And we just love you.
The feeling is certainly mutual on a number of levels. And, you know, I am always reminded of this in our lives and throughout the path that it's taken and the people that have been brought into our lives that set the tone and the foundation for what, you know, God is yearning to do, I think, with all of us, with all of our gifts, yours and ours. And I always remember that there is such power in connection. When God brings two people together, what we see taking place from that is simply powerful.
Well put.
And when we look back, I mean, we are so grateful to Ancient Faith and having exposed so many people to the endless amount of resources that Ancient Faith has. I mean, need to look no further than Ancient Faith when they're asking the questions. And I do think your story is so powerful for people who are in interfaith marriages, even, you know, people coming and saying, hey, we're so worried because our daughter or our son is, you know, dating somebody and, you know, they don't, you know, connect to the church. They don't want to convert. They don't. And I think, you know, your story is powerful that God works in ways that we, you know, we don't even understand to bring us to faith. And so we're also just thankful too that you guys are sharing this story with so many of our listeners. And we've actually had a couple questions come in through our Facebook page about
sure.
this, you know, like, hey, well, what would you say to families who are struggling with the question of what do we do when our child is getting married to somebody outside the faith? What is one thing you could recommend to bring that or expose people to the church in ways that aren't hostile, that aren't pressuring, but what is one piece of wisdom that you both could share?
Yeah. Don't try to be a fixer. God is the fixer. God loves them far more than you ever have or ever will. And let God do his work. Pray like crazy. Plead to the Theotokos. Ask God to provide and to put circumstances into their lives that will draw them to the faith. But it's going to be very difficult for you with your words when you are so emotionally connected with your words to convince them, you know, of anything. Others, what's going to convince them is your faithfulness, is your life, is your love. And I remember asking Kevin Shearer, who was at that point Father Kevin Shearer, at a conference, what is the Orthodox method of evangelism? Of course, I'm still steeped in the evangelical world, and I know how we would answer it as an evangelical. And I said, how do Orthodox evangelize? And he said, love. It's one word, love. And I thought, well, to myself at the time, too simplistic. That was profound because that is the truth.
Right.
We love, and we love unconditionally.
And we love people where they're at.
And let God do his work.
And I love the fact that you were asking so many questions. I always encourage, you know, that we grow in our faith when we ask the questions and we're willing to sit with questions, you know, even if we don't always have the answer right away. It's
That's right.
Not blocking those questions because that's what helps everyone grow, you know, the believer and the convert.
Yep. Yep.
So John, you're beginning a new chapter, you're kind of you're still in the same book of life, and but you're changing the page. What tell us what's some exciting things that are on in the next chapter of your life, both of your lives.
Well, I'll have to say that what makes us totally comfortable and at ease in making this transition is God's provision of a replacement. We prayed and prayed that God would lead just the right person to us to take the helm. And we looked all over. I mean, we did a nationwide search, and we determined that the person that is best for this job is right under our nose. It's our own Melinda Johnson. And ever since we approached her and we agreed that this is the direction we're going, with the approval of our board and with the approval of our metropolitan, it has been proven over and over again that, once again, like Tonya said earlier, God knew what he was doing, and God had a plan, and this was it. And so that's what makes us feel like we can take this next step. I had several things on my bucket list that I wanted to get done before we left. I wanted the new app to be completed. And the app is now completed. It's still brand new. Bugs are still being identified and worked out, but by and large, it's working well. And so that was one of the things. I wanted to have an independent audit of the Ancient Faith books. I wanted to leave with everybody seeing a clean bill of health, and with absolute integrity and above board in every regard. I wanted to get a trademark of the Ancient Faith brand. And just today, we got word that the Ancient Faith brand is now trademarked.
Nice.
I wanted to do better with our staff, salary-wise. Our staff have been working very sacrificially for many years, and we paid them as well as we could. But it was not easy. There were sleepless nights wondering if we were going to be able to make payroll. And so with the board's approval, we were able to do a little better for our staff, salary-wise. So there were several things like that we wanted to get done before we said goodbye. And then just this past, let's see, 3 or 4 weeks ago, Tonya and I did a trip to Albania. And we were asked to go and to work with the FM radio station owned by the church there, Archbishop Anastasios, to do some training. The station is called Radio Engalia, which means radio evangelism. And, or is it Resurrection Radio?
It's Resurrection Radio.
Yeah, that's right. And so we went there and stayed with missionaries Nathan and Gabriella Hoppy. We worked with Father Gregory Palucci, the station manager. We met with the Archbishop. We met with Metropolitan John of Cortia, did an interview with him. And we just had a week of pouring ourselves into a missionary outreach of Christian radio in a media that I knew very well, because this is old-fashioned FM radio. This is not internet radio. And so it was fun to get back into that environment where there's a physical transmitter and tower and actual broadcasting happening. And so that was fulfilling. And so I think what that did was awaken within us that desire to continue to invest ourselves in ministry, and knowing that Ancient Faith is in very good hands, a wonderful board, a wonderful staff, a great CEO. And so we can feel like we can move on with confidence that the work will continue here while we explore other things and maybe do a little RV camping on the side. What can I say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's extraordinary what you guys have done and are obviously continuing to do. And John, if you could wave a magic wand, where, just speaking in general terms about orthodoxy and utilizing such mediums as the media, in 10 or 15 years from now, in America specifically, where would you like to see us? Where would you hope to see the Orthodox Church? What would it look like as far as utilizing the different forms of technology that are out there now?
Well, it's funny you should ask that because if you'd asked me that 10 years ago, I would have spouted out something, off the top of my head, about technology, where I think it's going.
Mm-hmm.
And today, looking back, it doesn't look anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no resemblance to what I would have
Right.
said back then. So the way technology works, it's almost impossible to say, well, here's where I think it's going to be in 10 or 15 years. What I will say is what we need to have as a mindset that we keep up with it, that we research where is technology moving? How can we use these tools for the glory of God? And these are tools. The message is the message. The church is the church. There is no change in the historic one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. The way we communicate has always changed. Whether it was the Apostle Paul going on a ship to a foreign land, or whether it was the establishment of, radio in the largely Orthodox countries of Russia and Greece, or whether it's the internet, or whether it's an app, or whether it's YouTube. What are the tools? Actually, Bobby and I just had this discussion earlier today. Because they're starting to think about, what does the website look like in 2 or 3 years? What are the trendings of people, how they use the web versus the app? And we just reminded ourselves again, you just have to stay on top of it. Do your research, find out the trends, and get on board with it. And it's a lot of risk taking. It's a lot of hit and miss. But we have the message. And listen, God has blessed the Orthodox Church in this country with incredible communicators. And look at the family of communicators God has brought together just in the last 15 years. And that we need to make sure continues to happen, because as a Father Thomas Hopko reposes, or as the next generation gets older and retires or moves on, we need to constantly develop a new crop, to use a crass term, of communicators who can effectively communicate the gospel of Christ in a way that will reach into hearts and minds and show the love of Christ. And so I think, when you think about the future, who knows? I know we are these days concentrating a lot more on YouTube, and we just did a facelift of our YouTube page. And Cassiani, who does a lot of work in our Chinese language division, has just taken on the responsibility of overseeing our YouTube page under the digital leadership of Bobby and Ancient Faith Radio, and then, of course, the general oversight of Melinda. And she's already facelifted our YouTube page. It looks great. And
That's
so
awesome.
It's just constantly looking ahead and making sure we are on the cutting edge.
I love that. We were getting so many text messages from friends who were tuning in, as well as emails just thanking you. And this is just one that came across. It's from a gentleman named Costa. And he said, when I started listening to AF radio when we came here from South Africa 13 years ago, a parishioner said, it's not Greek. And I threw my hands up and said, Lord have mercy. But thank you 100-fold for allowing my wife, Mauro, and me to listen to you all day. God bless the two of you. And please continue to do something. Orthodoxy needs you. And I think that's so beautiful.
Orthodoxy needs you. I love that.
And I think, I know that we need you, but I also know that the amount of hours and time that you both have invested has taken time from each other. And, I was just, as we're closing out the minutes of our show, I'd love to just know, what are the two of you looking forward to doing just together, that you haven't really been able to do, while working and doing the ministry here at Ancient Faith?
Well, one thing is to actually leave the house, leave the station, and not worry about it going down. That's Trudy's job now. And she's sitting over here, and we're just so
Yeah.
grateful for her. But actually, just being together quiet, there's always so much chatter, or there's always something that has to be done. And so just to be able to go, we're going to go camping and just take bike rides. And we won't do that forever, but right now that sounds, so good to me. But I just wanted to say one more thing, is just to thank our staff that have been with us, and our podcasters that really make up Ancient Faith Radio. And it's a good time, I think, for us to say goodbye because of the new technology coming in. And these kids know it. I mean, they're kids. We're in our 70s. And so we just need to move aside and let them go at it. And we are so excited. The Lord has just brought amazing, amazing people into our life, and we'll always be grateful.
Yeah. And as I said earlier, I mentioned Father Tom Soroka coming up next, but his guest today is our good friend, Father John Parker, who is the Dean of St. Tikhon Seminary, another faithful partner back when he was the head of the Missions and Evangelization Department at the OCA, doing his podcast, Lord Send Me. And now he's at St. Tikhon's, and he does the Spirit of St. Tikhon's. They have an Ancient Faith studio at the seminary. Father Tom, in his home, has an Ancient Faith studio. They're going to be connected together across the miles and be able to speak to you like they're in the same room. And it is men like these two who took a risk with us and said, yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that. And they have done it, and they've done an amazing job of it.
Well, we mentioned this at the top of the show to both of you, John and Tonya. I mean, we feel like we are, closer to what God is yearning for us in our marriage and as individuals in our walk of faith because of having met people like you and you giving us the opportunity and this platform to make a difference. And so I'll never be able to thank you enough, John, just for your friendship, your counsel, your guidance. And I know that our relationship will continue to grow in the years to come. But I do want our listeners who listen to Live with the Louhs every week to know that if you're wondering who are some of the people that have been part of our inner circle that have shaped our lives, John and Tonya Maddex are at the top. They are people that have shaped our ministry. And so wherever we go, John and Tonya know that you're always with us because we feel like Ancient Faith has given us the platform and really the launching pad to do what we're doing right now. So thank you, brother, and thank you, Sister Tonya, for all that you guys have and continue to do for us.
God bless you guys.
Thank you. And be looking for a camper pulling into your driveway sometime.
We'll love it.
It'll be in the winter. It'll be winter time.
Come to Florida. We would love it.
The weather is beautiful these days.
John tells everybody, if you invite us, you better really mean it, because we'll pull up with that camper.
We have a bedroom waiting. Don't worry. You don't need the camper.
Well, in all seriousness, I love the words of the psalmist who said, "This is the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes."
Amen. Amen. Exactly.
Amen.
And what a tremendous staff, as you beautifully stated, Tonya, that we have here at Ancient Faith. And to me, Melinda Johnson serving as the new CEO of Ancient Faith. What an extraordinary, godly woman at the helm now that I think is going to be extraordinary for Ancient Faith for the years to come, and to really carry the baton that you guys have given and passed on to her. And so, listeners and faithful listeners of Ancient Faith, I would encourage you all continue to support not only through your prayers and your love, but also consider, as we're in this Christmas season, you're looking for some gifts that you can financially offer to ministries. Definitely consider Ancient Faith. If you're benefiting from it, trust me, let them know about it. We are here through the generous donations of people like you. So consider doing that during this holiday season. And thanks always to Matushka Trudy for producing our show. She's just extraordinary. Love her so much. And if you've enjoyed listening to our show tonight, or really any of our shows, definitely share with your friends. Tell your friends about Live with the Louhs. It airs every single Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And as always, if you're looking for a daily word of encouragement, consider our daily inspirational messages that you can find at thelohs.com/subscribe. Next Tuesday, we're interviewing a dear friend of ours who's a therapist named George Papa George. Beautiful last name, George Papa George, who's going to be talking about the psychology of holiday stress. You don't want to miss that show. It's next Tuesday at 8 p.m. God bless you all, friends, and stay strong in your walk of faith.
Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne are the authors of the book Renewing You,